So welcome everybody. My name is Nicole. I'm the Professional Development Manager for Bedford Freeman and West Publishing Group. We're here tonight to talk about our brand new textbook for non-AP statistics, written by Darren Starnes and Josh Tabor. Luke Wilcox is also our host for the night, and he has been instrumental in getting this book created. He's worked on a lot of the teacher resources, and he was one of the first users of the new textbook. The new book is called Statistics and Probability Through Applications, 3rd edition. You might be familiar with the 2nd edition book called Statistics Through Applications, but we've changed it a little bit this year. Before I let Darren, Josh, and Luke get things started, I have just a couple things. Number one, if you have any questions, please send them to me in the chat. We will be having time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, and I will be keeping track of all the questions in order to read them out to Darren, Josh, and Luke. You've also all been muted to cut down on background noise. So if you are having any problems with audio or anything like that, again, just send me a question using the chat function in WebEx. You can simply select host, and I'll get back to you during the presentation. Finally, we will be sending out a recording of the presentation, which is why we've muted all of you, just to make sure that the recording is something that you can share with your colleagues. And we will be sending that to you tomorrow afternoon. So I don't want to detract from the main event, so I'm just going to pass it over to Luke.
All right, we're going to just start with some quick introductions. So Darren, why don't you go ahead and start there?
Thanks, Luke. I'm Darren Starnes. I teach at the Lawrenceville School just outside of Princeton, New Jersey. Glad to have everybody with us.
I'm Josh Tabor. I don't have a webcam on right now, but you can just imagine me, a very good-looking guy. I'm the co-author of Statistics and Probability with Applications. I'm very happy that you're here listening to the webinar.
And my name is Luke Wilcox. I teach in Kentwood, Michigan here. I used the textbook last year, and in my high school we also just started an introductory stats class, and so I'm here to share a little bit about that experience here. So just to give you a little bit of background about my high school, East Kentwood High School, we're in West Michigan. One of the biggest high schools in the state of Michigan. We have about 2,700 students, 9 through 12. Recently they had one of these like top 50 lists that we actually were the #1 most diverse high school in the state. We have kids from all over the world. We have like 60 different languages represented in our hallways. There's kids from Africa, from Bosnia, from Mexico, from anywhere you can think of. We're about 25% ELL, so a lot of English language learners. Currently about 60% free and reduced lunch. For me, I've been there for 16 years now, and 12 of those years I've been teaching AP statistics. So much like probably lots of your high schools there, we had a very traditional sort of path for students in mathematics: Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, and then we had 2 AP classes, AP Stats and AP Calc. And what we were finding was that a typical student in our high school takes Algebra 1 as a freshman, Geometry as a sophomore, and Algebra 2 as a junior. And that sort of leaves them open for their senior year to make a decision about what they'd like to do. And some students choose pre-calculus, and then we also offer some other math courses, some elective math courses that students can opt to take. But this discrepancy between our elective math classes and pre-calculus was sort of a big gap there. And we were looking for another class, an option, that was, for a student who was college-bound, who was going to college, but maybe not quite ready for the rigor of pre-calculus. For some reason, pre-calculus gets this negative attitude towards it at our school for being such a difficult class. And so this is where we came up with the idea of using an introductory stats class as a fourth-year option for students. And so we wanted a class that certainly would be relevant to most of the college degrees that you see these days. Students have to take an intro stats class, and we wanted it to be less intimidating than a pre-calculus course. And so last year was the first year that we offered it. It is a 2-semester course, so a full-year course in intro stats, seniors only. And much to our surprise, we had 150 students that signed up for the class for last year. So we ended up with 5 full sections of intro stats. And so we used the sort of pilot version of statistics and probability with applications, which meant we were actually using Microsoft Word printed out versions of it that we had put in notebooks, and really had an awesome experience with the class, with the textbook, and just want to share a few insights maybe that I gained over the year using the book. First of all, the thing that I loved about the book, and really statistics in general, is that everything is developed within a context. And so there's always some sort of story to go along with the lessons that students are learning. We also found that there's a lesson application at the end of every lesson, and these lesson applications sort of encompass all of the learning targets from that particular lesson in one context. And for us, that was super valuable to use like at the end of a lesson as an exit ticket or as like a practice problem for students to work on, just so that we could get some feedback as the teachers as far as like what, did the students learn what we intended for them to learn for that particular hour. Coming from an AP statistics background, I wondered, how it would be different than AP. And curriculum-wise, you're going to see that it actually, the textbook contains a majority of what we do in AP statistics. I just found that it's much more scaffolded. And, that level of student definitely needs a little bit more structure, a little bit more scaffolding as far as learning that content. And by the end of the year, I was so impressed with the quality of work that these intro stats. Yeah, sure. I thought I heard somebody ask a question there. So really, in the end, a lot, our students were doing, a lot of them were doing AP level work. We did significance tests, we did confidence intervals, and at very similar levels to what I do in my AP course. In fact, we actually had 2 students at the end of the year that decided they wanted to take the AP statistics exam, and both of them passed. Both of them passed the AP exam with a 3, and that was sort of encouraging to say that we really had been doing a good job in this intro stats class. Another thing that we sort of thought about reflecting at the end of the year was that SPA could certainly be used for a 1-semester course, where you essentially would just take the first half of the book, the first 5 chapters rather than all 10 chapters, and do it as a 1-semester course instead of a 2-semester course. And we've actually sort of thrown around the idea of changing our geometry class around because Michigan's an SAT state, and on the redesigned SAT, there's much more emphasis on statistics, much less emphasis on geometry, and so we're considering the idea of sort of shrinking our geometry course and increasing the amount of statistics that those students use. And so I could definitely see SPA as a viable option for maybe a 1-semester course there. Now, one of the things that my colleague and I worked on, who both taught this course last year, Lindsay Gallus and I, we wanted to sort of share our experiences with SPA, and so we created a website called the Stats Medic, and on the Stats Medic, we did what we call 180 days of SPA. And essentially, it's just a day-by-day lesson plan. Here's what we did in our class. Here's some reflection from the teachers on what went well, what didn't go well, what kind of connections can we make to other lessons, links to things that we used on the internet. And we also developed an activity to introduce each lesson. So there's 71 lessons in the textbook. We have 71 activities. And all of the activities are designed to be an introduction to that lesson. So it's actually the first experience that the students have is to go through this activity. We typically did it in pairs or in groups of 4 with students. And then after they go through the activities, when we start to try and draw out the statistics that's relevant. And so I'd like to actually just show you real quickly what the StatsMedic looks like here. So I'm going to grab the screen here, I hope, yes. And this is what the website looks like. It's just thestatsmedic.com. And it's got a couple of things on here, but the part, of course, I want to highlight here is the 180 days of SPA. And so if you click on that, you can see we've got it organized by chapter. Those are the 10 chapters that you'll see in the textbook. And if you click through on one of the chapters, you'll see day by day, this is what we did on that particular day. And so if you click through, lesson 2.5, these are the 3 learning targets, which are actually established in the textbook. This is the activity that we use, and so you can actually click and download the activity to use. And then here's our discussion as far as like what we did in class and how it went, any reflections that we had. You can actually see a little bit of the applet that we use, which I'm sure Darren and Josh are going to refer to later. And then you can just click through day by day. Here's the next lesson. This is lesson 2.6. Here's the activity that we use with students, and then there's some discussion, notes, and you can just do that for every day. You'll see a new activity, the learning targets, even our quiz and test days, we sometimes have some commentary on there. And you'll see like activities. This is one of the activities that we did where students had to predict how far these little pullback cars would go, and we had sort of a race where they were trying to get as close as they could to those. So that's one of the things that's available. This is just on the internet. It's public use. Anybody can go here to check out 180 days of SBA. So I'm going to now pass the mic over here to Darren, and I think Darren's going to talk you through some of the big differences that between the second edition and the third edition.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Let me just admit that when we undertook the revision of this book over 2 years ago now, we made a pretty drastic decision to rethink the approach of the book to try to meet the needs of the on-level statistics student. Any of you that were familiar with either the first or the second edition of the book, the structure of that book looked a lot like the structure of a college statistical literacy course at the 100 level. It still looked an awful lot like a statistics book. There were a lot of words, lengthy paragraphs, and I would say the structure of the book felt like something that was very different from what students would see in their high school math experience. So as Josh and I were talking about it, we sort of challenged our assumption that the best way to present this material to students was in a way that was similar to what they would see in a college course. And over these 2 years, we've evolved the concept so that the book itself looks a little bit more like a mathematics textbook. The structure and the style will be familiar to students who may have come out of, say, an Algebra 2 course or a geometry course. So I think one of the things that will strike you first, if you take a look at the digital sample of the book that I'll show in a minute, is just how the structure is scaffolded, as Luke mentioned. So this was a big project, maybe just over 2 years to do all the writing. Josh and I split the chapters pretty much 50-50, and I'm pleased to say that the end product was very much a team effort with Luke and Lindsay and others who are piloting the book here at Lawrenceville and at Josh's school and down in Georgia, giving us feedback along the way. So I definitely want to express gratitude to everyone who was involved in helping us pilot the book and getting it to this stage. So I wanted to make sure people were aware of this slide that I'm showing actually came from the preview site for the book. It's a lovely site where you can dig a little bit deeper than what we're going to go in this webinar. But I want to focus on what's new since the second edition and give you a couple of insights into this rethinking of the book that we did. So Luke mentioned that there are now 70...
Darren, I want to interrupt for a second. I'm not seeing any changes on the screen.
Uh-oh.
So unless you're still on the first slide, I think we need to change that up. We're not seeing anything different.
Yeah. It's still just a microsite.
So are you seeing the program overhaul slide or not?
No, I'm seeing. I'm seeing the very first slide after Stats Medic, which is slide 7.
Do you want me to take back control, Darren, and I can just move the slides along?
Yeah, I'm actually not on a slide. I'm on the preview site at the moment. So maybe if you could click out of that slide to get me to the preview site, that would be great.
I think we're still seeing the presentation, so.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. I'm not sure why there's such a big delay.
Darren, did you press the Quick Start tab and the Share My Desktop thing?
That's a negative. I actually don't see that tab.
There should be a Quick Start tab in the WebEx.
Yeah. If you go to the WebEx, it's in the upper left corner.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. I'm starting to see Darren's desktop. We got it now.
All right. The miracle of the right button. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That wasn't meant to be quite that hard. All right, just give me a second. We'll get back to where. So here's where I was trying. Here's where I was trying to go. This is the preview site I was mentioning. As I was saying, you can dig a little bit deeper. We hope you will after the webinar. But my focus here is on what's new and different about the third edition in comparison to the previous two. So probably the biggest change is the one Luke mentioned, that we've broken the chapters down into very short lessons, ideally lessons that could be completed in one class period if you wish, or 2 class periods if you wish, depending on how long you want to spend doing activities and things like Luke was mentioning. You could certainly easily spend 2 days on any lesson. You could also manage to do most of the lessons in 1 day, particularly if you were doing more of a semester course. We did decide to follow the lead of Common Core and the SAT and to include probability deliberately in the title of the high school textbook. There's certainly plenty of rich probability content, maybe more than I would do here at our school with our on-level stat students, but we wanted to include enough that people who wanted to do, for example, combinations and permutations could do so. The other big structural feature that you'll notice is that there's a very close connection between the learning targets at the beginning of each lesson, usually about 3 learning targets, and an example that's directly linked to those learning targets. So there's an obvious one-to-one mapping in most cases between the learning target, the example, and then an odd-numbered exercise that students can work that's very, very similar in structure to the worked example. So here's a quick visual. The second edition had 10 chapters but only 26 sections. We've upgraded to 71 lessons instead, so much more digestible bite-sized chunks. I mentioned the learning targets, so this is a prominent feature at the beginning of each lesson. And at the end of the lesson, you'll see the What Did You Learn box that summarizes the relationship between the learning target, the example, and the exercises. Speaking of those examples, in the third edition, all of the examples are set up in a problem solution format like the 2 that you see here. And the idea is that the student work that we would expect students to be showing on their paper is in this special handwritten font on the left. And then on the right-hand side are these teacher talk boxes, we're calling them, that is the voice of the teacher in their head as they're doing this thing. So quite often the students will look back at the example as they're working a homework question. We want them to see not only what they're supposed to do, but also hear the voice of the teacher ringing in their heads as they do it. In the second edition, you'll notice the examples were much more paragraph style. There actually wasn't a defined problem and solution in all cases. It was a bit overwhelming for some of the students who weren't used to having this type of textbook. The exercise sets are very carefully structured in the third edition. The beginning set of exercises is called Mastering Concepts and Skills that are paired up very strictly with the examples. Then the Applying the Concepts will sometimes blend multiple learning targets and ask students to complete a more in-depth question. And then in a few cases, we'll have something called Extending the Concepts that go beyond the required material, as we do here, doing a stem plot where you split into 5 stems instead of a stem plot where you split into 2 stems like you see in the early exercises. And then at the end of the exercise sets, we have these recycle and review problems that help, if you want to do some spiraling, referring the students back to the appropriate section where that material was introduced. Then at the end of chapter, we have the chapter review exercises and a chapter practice test that might be in the style of a classroom test, some multiple choice questions and some short answer or free response questions as well. You'll notice in the second edition there was much less of a defined mapping between the example and the exercise sets, and so it made it a little more difficult for assigning problems as well as for students to navigate through the problems as they were trying to do them. And I think I'm going to let Josh speak to this part if he doesn't mind, because I think he has a really insider's knowledge of the applets that were developed. I will say that we made the decision to focus on the TI-8384 and the provisional applets in place of some of the other technology options for students. In an intro stats course that's not AP, we didn't know for sure that students would have the same calculator or even that they would all have a calculator. So I think with that, Josh, I'm going to pass it your way.
Okay, great. So let me pick up with just a quick discussion of the applets. And I know this is something that that Luke did as well when he was teaching the class, is that we wanted to make sure that students who were in an on-level statistics class who weren't going to be taking an AP exam weren't forced to buy a graphing calculator that might cost $100 or $150. We wanted this class to be accessible to as many students as possible. So we created these applets that students can use on any mobile device that's free for anybody, even if you're not using the book. It's on it's an open website. And essentially, they are not just demonstration applets like you'd see for a lot of statistics books. We have those also, but they are graphing calculator replacements. They're intended to do all the basic summary statistics, make all the graphs, including graphs that won't make, like dot plots and things like that. They'll do all the inference techniques that we expect, both traditional and simulation-based. So randomization tests, they'll do some confidence intervals via simulation and things like that. And of course, an applet that will do all the basic probability calculations, like normal and binomial distributions and other things like that. So we find that, I find that my AP kids like using them too, especially for projects and things like that where they need to make nice graphs, because they're easy to use. They do exactly what we want them to do for this level of class. Okay, so that's the applets. I wanted to take you through a little bit more of the table of contents. So we'll look here, moving along, a couple more slides, there we go. Let me pick up with a digital sample. We're not going to look through that right now, but we have samples of at least Chapter 1, I think Chapter 2, available on the preview site. So you can really get a sense of the lesson structure. You can see that a lesson might take, 4, maybe 6 pages to introduce the material and give the examples, and then a couple pages of exercises, much like you'd experience in a traditional math textbook. We know that that'll make it easier for students to use. It'll make it easier for teachers to use. And it'll facilitate the way that students typically use a math book, which is they start in the exercises. When they get stuck, they look back for an example. And then when they find that example, then they might read the material around it. So we know that that's how kids use books, and so we wrote the book so that students could be successful using that approach if they choose to. Okay, so we'll look at the next slide. Just highlighting the table of contents. Luke kind of alluded to this, that the table of contents is going to look like a statistics textbook that you might use in a college or in an AP class. We cover one variable data, which is, your basic graphs and summary statistics. Two variable data, looking at scatter plots and relationships between variables. Chapter 3 on collecting data is a really nice diversion, I think, from a traditional sort of math class. There's a lot of reading and writing and explaining and thinking about how to collect data wisely and the kinds of conclusions that we can draw from studies. These are the lessons that I want my students to remember most from a statistics class, thinking about how to read media reports critically and understanding the inferences they can make. Then as Darren alluded to, chapters 4, 5, and 6 form a 3-chapter sequence introducing probability, random variables, and sampling distributions. The sampling distributions chapter forms the sort of foundation for the inference chapters, which come through 7 through 10. So 7 is about confidence intervals for means and proportions. 8 is about significance tests for means and proportions. 9, we look at comparing two proportions, comparing two means, looking at paired differences, both confidence intervals and tests. And finally, chapter 10, we look at chi-square tests as well as inference for slope. So again, if you've taught an AP statistics course or a traditional statistics course, all these topics are going to sound very familiar. What makes SPA different, like both Luke and Darren alluded to, is that it's very well scaffolded for the students. So there's very clear targets, very clear skills that they need to learn at each stage and through each example. And students, I think, find it not overwhelming because of the way it's scaffolded. So a couple other things we want to highlight before we open up some questions. And that is on the next slide. We'll take a look at some of the supplements. I think, we'd like to think that the student edition is, good enough on its own, and I think it is, but the supplements for SPA are really what sets this book apart from, I think, a lot of the other ones that you might be considering. We're the only textbook that we know of that offers an annotated teacher's edition. That is a teacher's edition that has wraparound margins, where all the answers to all the solutions, the exercises and the examples and the check your understandings are right there on the same page. But most of all, there's teaching tips exactly where you need it. If there's some common error that students make in lesson 2.5, when we get to that part, you'll see a teaching tip that addresses that common error, exactly lined up with the paragraph that it applies to. So it's a really handy resource for everything you need. It also includes an alternate example for every single example in the book. There's 212 worked examples in the book. All of those have videos that students can watch for free on our website. But each of those examples also has an alternate example that's going to be available to you in the ATE, also in Word format, so that you can integrate them into a PowerPoint. You can put them on a quiz. You can put them in some guided notes. You can put them on tests. You can use them however you want. And they align perfectly with the examples that are already in the book. The Teacher Solutions Manual. Luke was the author of the Solutions Manual. He paid very, very close attention to make sure that the solutions in the Solutions Manual, and as well as the back of the book, align with the model solutions that we provided in the book. The Teacher's Resource Flash Drive has a lot of the things that I've mentioned already from the Teacher's Edition, plus lots of other good resources. One of the things I'm most excited about is that we have a brand new test bank that's being written from scratch, where we've got targeted multiple choice questions that address each learning target, plus some free response questions that integrate different learning targets. And they're all coded so that you can go through and know exactly what questions apply to what learning target, and vice versa, so that you can create tests and quizzes that match exactly the learning targets that you want to test on or that you want to emphasize. And it should be nice to and easy to make multiple versions this way also. I know one problem that a lot of textbooks have is that the tests that are provided with the book end up showing up online and things like that. So we'll provide you with one template of a test and of a quiz to show you, sort of an ideal length and the types of questions you might ask, but then provide a rich test bank so that you can mix and match and create fresh versions all the time. Finally, we have two versions of an ebook that you can use with your students. The Adapt Text basically looks exactly like the textbook does. The pages look exactly the same. There's not a lot of bells and whistles. It does have links to outside resources like the videos and things. The Launchpad ebook, the pages look a little bit different, but it allows you to integrate lots of resources sort of as you go along. It's more customizable, including some online testing options and things like that that are available on Launchpad, which is a more, I guess, comprehensive package. Certainly your reps would know more about the differences there and all of that. So I'm really excited not only just about the book, but about all the supplements. We've been working really hard to produce a set of quality materials with the idea that teachers who are teaching this class and using this book may never have taught statistics before. And we want to make sure that those teachers feel as supported as possible when they're venturing into an area where they may not feel that comfortable. So everything that we did in the student edition and the teacher's resources was with that in mind. So with that, I want to thank everybody for listening to us talk for a little bit. We'd be happy to open it up now for questions and answers. So I'm going to pass it back to Nicole to see if there's been any questions asked. And so if you have a question, please fill that in the chat and send that to Nicole, the host.
Thank you. We actually do have one question, but I do want to mention that we do have ebook samples available. So we can set you up with a digital sample of the textbook so you can take a look at what it looks like without waiting for the print book to be shipped to you. If you are interested in that, you can feel free to reach out to me via email or send a message in the chat, and we can reach out to you and put you in touch with your sales rep. Now, we did get one question throughout the presentation, and if you have any additional questions, please send them to me in the chat, and I can start to create kind of a queue. But the first question is from Mina, who is actually a user of Statistics Through Application 2nd edition. She really did enjoy the book, but found that she needed to tweak the order of the textbook a little bit. Is this something that would be possible in the new edition, or is every chapter of SPA dependent on the previous chapters? So kind of do the chapters build off each other, or can you change the order around a little bit?
Yeah, I think we've designed the book so that it's possible to relocate some chapters. I'll just give one example, and Josh may be able to give one as well. There's often a debate in an introductory statistics class about whether you should start with data collection and methods of doing surveys and experiments, observational studies, or whether you should start with data analysis. So we followed the kind of standard model to start with data analysis, but a more experienced teacher may want to start with the data collection methods, whereas most folks want to start with data analysis. So my guess is that, well, not a guess, I'm pretty certain that a teacher who is experienced could relocate a chapter without too much trouble. I wouldn't advise it for a teacher who is just starting out.
Now this is Josh coming in. I'll say that my colleague who helped pilot this textbook at our school last year was not going to have enough time to finish the entire book in his course. So we made some strategic decisions to say we wanted to focus on inference as much as possible. So we were able to cut through a decent amount of the probability material, pass over it essentially. There was a few times when we had to fill in a few details. And so Some of the probability material either could be skipped over if you're teaching a course that's maybe one semester, or moved to the end depending on what your preference is. So there are some possibilities there. And again, if you've taught the course before, you'll have a better sense of the kinds of things that you'd need as prerequisites. But it certainly is possible to do that.
Yeah, and if I could chime in just as a last remark here, for what we did at East Kentwood High School, we did essentially sort of take it start to finish. I mean, like lesson 1-1 all the way through the last lesson in chapter 10. And for the most part, we generally spent 1 day per lesson. And we were able to finish the book with time left at the end of the course. We actually spent the last week of the course doing a big project where students posed their own statistical questions, collected their own data, and then did some sort of inference with the data collection and created these posters. And so there's definitely a little bit of room there as far as, I mean, if you're doing it as a full year course, you definitely have some room to move things around if you need to, because it is possible to get through all of the lessons within a school year.
Thank you, guys. We do have a couple more questions coming in. So are there instructions on using the TI Inspire for statistics? I know we mentioned the applets, but is there also a way to integrate in the TI Inspire?
This is Josh. So in the actual student edition, the only calculator we feature is the TI 8384, and of course the applets. For our AP statistics book, we have an appendix that addresses the TI Inspire. So if we hear that teachers are interested in using that, that's something that we could definitely try to, I guess, transfer over and make available on a website. Would be instructions for using the Inspire. We don't have those currently, but thanks for the question, and we will pass that along and see if we can get something going for the TI Inspire. So stay tuned, and hopefully we can do something for you.
And just another note on that, I guess I didn't mention this in my presentation, but Josh sort of did mention it, is that we actually taught the course without graphing calculators. And so we had like 15 iPads. Students worked in pairs, and they used their iPads, or they could also use their phones as well with the applet. And we used the applet as a replacement for the graphing calculator. And then, of course, on quizzes and tests, we did have to provide just a simple scientific calculator. But we were able to teach the whole course without any TI 8384 or Inspires.
That could make it pretty simple then. So the next question that we've gotten is, could the course be divided into 2 semesters? And alternatively, can you use the textbook in a 1-semester course? I kind of lumped those 2 questions together since they were kind of similar.
So this is Luke. I can speak from my experience that the textbook actually divides itself really nicely into 2 chunks when you look at chapters 1 through 5 and chapters 6 through 10. And so certainly you could teach just one of those semesters. If you were to try and squeeze the entire book into 1 semester, you would have to be moving pretty quickly. There's 71 lessons. You might have to be a little bit careful about picking and choosing all of the lessons. Like Josh had mentioned, there are some lessons that you might be able to skip over if you wanted to make sure to get to the inference. Although I do think it's best taught in a full year course if you're going to do all 10 chapters.
And this is Josh. Let me add one other thought in, and that is that chapters 1 through 5, what Luke was talking about, the first chunk, if you're in a state that does the Common Core or something equivalent to the Common Core, you should have covered pretty much all the material that's, or most of the material that's in chapters 1 through 5. And then you could have a one-semester course that really blasts through 1 through 5 as a quick review, and then focuses on 6 through 10. And that's, again, if your school or your curriculum has covered a decent amount of statistics already by the time they get to the course.
The next question we have is from another user of STA, saying that they love the activities and hands-on data collection options in the second edition. Are they still there in the third edition? And what are some of the improvements, or did you increase any of those activities when you moved to the third edition? I think we...
Yeah, so this is...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Nicole, it's Darren on this one. So one of the things that Josh and I firmly believe in, and I think Luke would back us up on this, is the importance of using activities to motivate the learning of statistical concepts. And our challenge in looking back at the second edition or even the first edition is that there were some of the activities in there that neither Josh nor I really would feel comfortable using in our classroom to motivate concepts. Some of them were carryovers from the past. And so we took a hard look at all of the activities that were in STA2, and we did keep or improve upon some of those from our own classroom experiences. But we also brought in some activities that we felt were high impact, ones that would really get a lot of learning value. So I would say we were very judicious about including activities as motivation, as a way to develop concepts. But we also wanted to be sure that Josh or me or Luke or anyone using the book would feel that the use of any one of those activities got a lot of value out of them.
Yeah, and so I'll piggyback on that, Darren. This is Luke. The concept that you have that you want high impact, high value, I think is important, because we don't want to just be doing activities because they're fun. We want to make sure that we're doing activities that are leading towards some sort of learning of a statistical concept. And that, I felt like the activities that were chosen in the book did a really nice job of that. If the activities in the book, it's because it connects very closely with one of the learning targets. And so I used the majority of the ones that you see in the book, or modified versions of it somehow to sort of like fit my school or my clientele. And ultimately, I mean, that's where I see the best student learning is when it sort of students get a chance to experience first, and then we formalize the statistical concepts that they're supposed to pull out of that.
And then we only have 2 more questions. So if you do have any questions for me, please send them in the chat and I can add them to my list. The next question is, I'm always looking for relevant data sets. Have you guys increased the data set resources in the new edition?
So this is Josh. At the end of each lesson, we have what's called a lesson app. So there's at least 71 of those. We also have chapter applications, so there's 10 more of those. So there's at least 81 examples that are explicitly meant to show how statistics applies to the real world, which would include real data sets and interesting contexts and things like that. Plus, I'd say that most of the examples and exercises also feature interesting and real data sets that students can hopefully find interesting. I will say that there's a lot more exercises and examples in this edition than there were in the previous edition. We had to work hard and call in lots of help to come up with all the different contexts and data sets that we needed to fill out the exercises and examples. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how much data there are and the interesting variety of applications.
We are getting a couple thank yous from people saying thank you for your very thoughtful revisions that you've made, and thank you for all of the additional resources like the videos that you guys have also created. They're very, very helpful. So I just want to extend those thanks.
You're welcome.
The last question we got, and I know this is something that Luke touched on in the beginning of the presentation, but if you currently teach at a school that does not have a non-AP statistics option, what are some ways that you can, go to your administrator and ask for that, ask to add a fourth-year statistics math course? What are
I can. This is Luke. I can definitely. Well, I can tell you what the way the conversation went at my school was. I talked about that sort of gap that students had between Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, but really the motivating idea that made it, I think, appealing to my administration was that when you look at students that are going to college, no matter what degree they're going into, whether they're going into biology or psychology or some sort of math field, a majority of those college degrees are going to require an introductory statistics class, and we want to set our students up for success when they get to college. And so that in itself provided a lot of value for the course, and the administrators bought into that value. In addition to that, I mean, when we think about preparing students for the world, if you look at the relevancy of pre-calculus versus the relevancy of statistics, they're certainly going to be experiencing statistics a lot more in their real life than they are polynomial division from pre-calculus. And so from a relevancy standpoint and preparing students to be successful in the world, I definitely think you have that argument with your administration, is that they're going to use this information that they're learning. And so it was a really easy sell for us. We took it to the Curriculum Council. Curriculum Council definitely saw our motivation for wanting to have the course, and the students did as well. I mean, without even much sort of advertising on our part, we had 150 kids that signed up for it, and so I think that the students also see the relevancy of it.
Yeah, this is Darren. I'll chime in and say that we know that we have quite a few students in our math program that aren't destined for calculus in the near future, maybe in the far distant future, but not right now. And they know that because they've gone through the traditional algebra sequence, at least through Algebra 2, possibly through Algebra 3 trig or pre-calc, but they sort of know that, at least at the moment, this is neither their strength nor their passion. And what's great about statistics is that it's accessible to virtually everyone that comes through our school. So like Luke, we had an easy case to make, that we wanted to try to keep as many students involved in mathematics for 4 years as we could. We don't have a 4-year requirement at our school, but we very much wanted to serve students well for their college and career beyond, and for their life as citizens. And so it really was an easy sell to create an on-level statistics course. We were able to get pretty instant enrollment for a couple of sections, and fortunately we had teachers in the department who were eager to start teaching statistics, besides ones who had maybe taught AP statistics in the past, people who'd gotten a little bit familiar with it in the Algebra 2 course through some of the work that would be similar to Common Core or the redesigned SAT. So we had a very good experience adding the course, and the students that are in that course, for the most part, didn't want the level of challenge that you'd find in AP statistics. Although, as Luke points out, there's occasionally a kid or two that really dazzles you and ends up finding out that they really were ready for the challenge of AP. They just weren't in the AP statistics section.
This is Josh. I'm just going to agree with everything that Darren and Luke said and keep my mouth shut from there.
Hey, Nicole, I wonder if we could put up the slide that had our contact information at the end of the presentation. I want to be sure people feel comfortable. If you'd like to email me or Josh or Luke with any questions, we'd be happy to respond to you individually about things that may not have come up in the webinar or that you think of later.
I'm also going to be adding my email address to this list, so if you would like to email me as well, or I can even, forward along to Darren, Josh, or Luke, or put you in contact with your sales representative if you're interested in seeing a copy of the print textbook, or if you have any questions in general, you can send them straight to me. Let me just get that slide up again. And then my email address is on the bottom. Like I said, we will be sending everyone a recording probably tomorrow afternoon, if not on Thursday. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to do a last call for all questions. So anyone still on the call, if you have any questions at all, send them to me in the chat. And we can send out the PowerPoint as well if you'd like to see that. All right, a lot of thank yous are coming in, but no questions. So I do just want to reiterate that if you do think of something tonight or tomorrow or after you've shared the video presentation with some of your colleagues, feel free to either email Darren, Josh, Luke, or myself. So thank you guys for joining and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you.